So my name is Annick Ina, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a transformational coach, meaning I work with women and I help them rebuild their lives after they've quit alcohol. Well, not only that, I help them rebuild their lives after they've quit alcohol, and most importantly, I help them craft a new present and future, craft a reality that they don't want to escape from. So that's what I do. And I'm also the author of Soul Superstar Stories from My Sober Heart, which is the book where I actually share my own transformation, my own journey, and how I reclaimed my power and came back to myself. So this is me. And today, as the title of this live says, we are going to talk about BYOB, being your own booze. So before I start, there's something that I would like to say, and that's just a teeny weeny disclaimer. And that's because, just because it's always good to tell you, to remind you that what I say, what I share with you is from my experience, and it's my opinion, and it comes from what I have read, watched, or listened to. And although what I've read, watched, or listened to comes from or has been produced by medical doctors, health practitioners, scientists, researchers, etc., I'm nothing of this. I'm none of this. So just take what I say with a pinch of salt, with a grain of salt, and know what's best for you. That said, let's dig into today's topic, be your own booze, BYOB. So there is always a reason why we drink, whether we know it or not. And of course, there are people who are physiologically dependent on alcohol. And what that means is that as soon as they start or as they try to decrease their alcohol consumption, they get terrible symptoms. They get withdrawal symptoms that can go from diarrhea to an increase in the blood pressure, in their heart rate. They get seizures, they get nausea, they get a lot of horrible stuff. But these people are actually a minority compared to the majority of people who drink, who actually, even though they do not fit the society's definition of alcoholic, are actually psychologically dependent on alcohol. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, because the reason why we drink is because alcohol addresses a need for us, a need that we have and a need that our body has. So let's say, for example, something that I hear very often and something that you might relate to is when we drink because we are stressed. We've had a long day and we had a meeting, a very long meeting, and we get to the end of the day and we're like, And what we do is we have a glass of wine, a cocktail, a beer, whiskey, whatever we're used to drinking, to take the edge off, to calm us down. And sometimes that even happens when we are happy. We get a promotion and we're like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then that emotion in our body makes us want to immediately reach out for a glass of alcohol to just bring the energy down a bit, to calm us, to bring us back to this stability that we're used to. So that's another reason. And another thing is, even though people might say they drink because they just like the taste of it, well, the thing is that that's not entirely true. Because whether you like it or not, the moment alcohol enters our body, it alters it. It's a bit like a paper shredder. I don't know if you've seen that, if you've ever used one. You know, there's the automatic ones where it's on, but it's not doing anything. And the moment you put a sheet of paper in, the moment the blades feel that sheet of paper, they start rolling and pull the paper down. That's somehow the same thing that happens to our body. The minute you put a drop of alcohol in your body, it will, just like the paper shredder wanting to pull the paper down, your body will want more alcohol. It will want you to just pour more alcohol down your throat. That's physiological. So, one of the biggest reasons why we drink is as a response to a certain feeling. As I said earlier, this feeling could be because we're stressed, or because we're upset, or because we're sad, or we're dealing with pain, with grief, with anger, or positive feelings as well. So, can you relate to that? I'm just curious. Can't really see the comments, so I'm just going to go on. So, if you have seen my post recently on being sensitive and alcohol, one of the big reasons why a lot of people turn to alcohol is because the amount or the intensity of feelings is just too much for them to bear. It's too much for them to handle, and the only way for them to survive is to actually turn away from it, to actually close the feelings, close themselves out, close the feelings out, and build this thing where nothing else exists. And that's why they use alcohol to numb themselves and to numb those feelings. And I read a really interesting article the other day on Mind Body Green, and what it said was, and I'm going to read it: being highly sensitive is like living with the volume turned up in the world. Everything is heightened, much more intense and louder. This is a result of an increased sensitivity in our central nervous system and the way our brains cognitively process physical, social, and emotional stimuli. So what that means is that, especially when you are highly sensitive, the more feelings you have, or the more intense your feelings are, the more you're going to want to run away to numb them. But that doesn't only happen to people who are highly sensitive. It also happens to people who are normally sensitive. It just happens less frequently than people who are highly sensitive, if that makes sense. So, what happens when we have this overload of feelings is that we indulge in numbing practices or distractions. So these distractions very often can take a lot of different forms. For example, it could be, of course, alcohol, drugs, but also socially accepted or even encouraged behaviors. For example, Netflix. A big one. That's a big one. You know, you've had a big day and you're so stressed, so what you do, you just come home, sit in front of your computer and just watch Netflix until you just fall asleep on the couch or in bed. There's also social events. Some people just don't want to be left on their own at home with their own thoughts and feelings, and they prefer to go out and stay out until late and then come back home and go to bed. Or, you know, there's work and working out, there's sex, food. Food is a big one. Sugar, don't get me started on sugar. That's a big one. And as I said earlier, sometimes those distractions can actually be socially encouraged as well. And we don't realize that we are actually engaging in distractions or numbing behaviors. So one example of this is cleaning up. Some people clean their house up when they are upset, and because it's a positive thing, nobody says anything about that. Or people meditate, but sometimes the thing is, meditation can also be a way to escape from reality. So we've got to be careful and mindful of why we do what we do and of the feelings that we have going on in our being. So I will just share a little bit of my story and how that relates to that overload of feelings, and how that just leads us to alcohol. And a little bit before I stopped drinking, or should I say in that period where my drinking was at its worst, was when I was actually running my business. I had 3 shops. It was a retail business. I had 3 shops, and I had staff to manage, and I had all the things to take care of, the administrative stuff, the imports and everything, the stock, clients. That was a lot of stuff. And every time my business partner would go away to go buy more stock for the shops, I would be left alone to look after the whole business on my own. I would have to run the shops. I would have to look after the staff, make sure they have everything they need, make sure they are all happy, make sure they're not sick and they come to work every day, pay the taxes, pay the bank, pay everyone who needs to be paid, take care of the 2 households and the 7 cats, make sure they are all fed. And at the end of the day, after a week or so, I would usually get so stressed that the minute I would go out and have a drink, things would just go out of control and I would overdo it in a very ugly way. So that was just a sign, and I realized only later that these events only happened when I was on my own, and that's because I was running the shops and my levels of stress were higher than usual. But at the time, I was just trying to be strong and independent and showing the world that I could deal with everything. And I was too proud to say that that was too much. And so I had to compensate in a way. And that way was alcohol. So that's why it's important to be mindful, as I said earlier, of our emotions and our feelings. So the reason why we run away is, it could be simply that's because we don't know how to deal with our feelings. We might have grown up in a family where we were not used to deal with feelings. We were not used to express feelings. And sometimes having feelings or expressing feelings was actually pointed fingers at. So we grow up and we tend to suppress our feelings and to keep them inside and to forget about them, or at least try to. And the thing is that whether we want or not, feelings will happen. And sometimes when they're there, we just don't want to deal with them. And that's normal. That's absolutely normal. We're tired. We feel saturated by everything that is happening around us. Or, we just need a break. Sometimes it could also happen that those feelings are scary. They feel too big and we feel alone. And very often what happens in those cases is that we try and find comfort in a glass of wine, or as I said earlier, a beer, a glass of whiskey, a cocktail, or whatever it is that we're used to drinking. And the thing is that we are so used to using alcohol to numb our feelings or to cope with our feelings that one of the biggest challenges when we quit alcohol is having to sit with those feelings, having to deal with all our feelings without running to alcohol or any other kind of distraction or numbing practice. So, once again, I will stop and ask you, do you relate to that? Have you had the same experience? If you have quit alcohol recently, or if you think about when you quit alcohol, do you remember having those moments where you had feelings come up and you were like, oh my God, where does that even come from? What do I do with this? Did you have any of that sort of situation come up for you? So, of course, there's a whole lot of work that you could do, preemptive work that you do to reduce the flow of those feelings. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today, We're not going to talk about how not to get hit that hard by our feelings, because that takes more work and it's a longer work. What I'm going to talk about today is more of a practical what to do when stuff. So I really want to plant the seed of the possibility for you to be YOB, meaning be your own booze, and learn how to deal and process emotions and life in general without booze, because life is better without booze. It is, at least for me. So the first step is actually to identify the feelings. It's like your health, if you've got an issue, if you got a headache, or if you've got some sort of weird feeling in your stomach, before running to your cabinet and taking whatever pill you find, you will try to understand what the problem is so that you choose the right one that will heal what it is that you have. So the same goes for when cravings peek their head around the corner. Try understanding why this is happening and ask yourself, why is this happening? What just happened? Why am I feeling this way? And try and track back the moment when it started and the reason. And this is because knowing why you are feeling how you are feeling is what could help you take steps to feel better. Like, for example, you're upset because someone said something to you and maybe you hadn't realized it, but then you realize, you stop and you start thinking, oh, I actually started feeling like that at that specific moment 2 hours ago, and that's right after I had this conversation with XYZ, and so, oh, that's probably because they said this to me. So instead of reaching out for a glass, what you could do, for example, is have a conversation with XYZ, or actually just realize, oh, I'm just upset because they said something to me, so why should I fill my body with a substance that is not going to help me when they are the ones who said something to me? So what is important is that feelings are like energy. I don't know if you remember. I remember when I was at school, there was this law of physics. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed. So in a way, feelings are like energy in the sense that they can't be destroyed. They can only be transformed. So if there is a feeling that creeps up, not looking at it is not going to make it just poof go away. Drinking is not going to poof it away. It's just going to transform it into something that can become very ugly. So that's why looking at it in all awareness, in all consciousness, can lead us to transform it in a way that is good for us. And sometimes when the emotions are not obvious, when the reasons why we are feeling how we are feeling are not obvious, doing a little bit of digging can help. And by digging, I mean looking at things like that. So how am I feeling? How can I describe this feeling? Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I upset? Am I angry? Am I feeling unworthy? Or, ask yourself why, if there is a bigger category of feelings that you can put that feeling in, and then dig deeper by asking yourself why. So for example, let's take a concrete example that's going to be easier. Let's say I'm not happy because I don't know, let's just take a name. Sarah said that she's not going to come to my party. Okay, so that's a key question. So I wish Sarah would come. And that's another key question. And she's not coming. So how does that make you feel? Well, I feel like she is going to be missing something, or I'm going to miss her presence, and I feel like she doesn't care enough to come to my party, or blah blah blah. You know the reasons why, and you will see the reasons coming, and you will see the feelings coming up. In that case, it's a bit obvious, so maybe that wasn't the right example, because if you're sad because Sarah is not coming to your party, you're sad, and sad is a feeling that's good enough to try and transform. Sometimes we just feel a surge of an icky feeling and we don't even know what it is, why it is. So that's when we ask those questions. For example, I don't like my new job. Why? Because I don't get to travel a lot. And I love traveling. Why? Because traveling allows me to meet new people. And when I meet new people, I get the opportunity to talk and laugh and connect with them. And when I have this new job, I won't get to do any of this. And I feel disconnected. So this also allows us to take steps to compensate for what is causing us that icky feeling, or that feeling that we don't like. For example, in the case of that job, we don't like that job because it makes us feel disconnected. Well, unless we can change jobs, what we can do is find something else that makes us feel connected. Take up some activity where we can connect with people so that it compensates and creates that balance, so that at the end of the day, we get our connection from somewhere else and we don't feel that void that needs to be filled, and that we usually feel with alcohol. So now let's get to the ways we can actually be our own booze, the ways we can use practices that do not involve alcohol. So one thing that I really, really like, and that was suggested to me by a client, is 5-minute art. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. It is something that's taught by Sam Bennett. And it's about creating, as the name says it, 5-minute art. And it's not about being an artist. You don't have to create a masterpiece. That's not the point. The point of doing it is to actually transform or process the feelings. As I said earlier, it's important to transform the feelings so that they don't end up morphing into something horrible, into a big monster that we can't control. So the process for the 5-minute art is basically when something happens to you. Let's say you go to a meeting and your boss says something that upsets you and you don't get to say anything to them. You go back to your office and you feel like, ah. So what you do, you take a piece of paper and for 5 minutes, you create a piece of art with it. And whether it is drawing or just folding the piece of paper or just putting pens together and putting them into some sort of shape, anything, just be creative. Just try and create a piece of art for 5 minutes that represents that emotion that you have, will actually allow you to take that feeling and move it from inside of you to outside of you. It will give it a container so that it can stay there and not inside of you, eating you from the insides. So this is a method that works really, really well for emotions like fizzy emotions, active emotions like anger and any sort of active feeling. But of course it can be applied for any other type of feeling as well. Then another thing I suggest is creating your rituals, because very often alcohol is related to a ritual. It is actually no other than a ritual. And I realized that when I had just quit alcohol, about a month into sobriety, I remember I was in Germany and we were traveling to Frankfurt, from Hamburg to Frankfurt. That's a 5-hour drive. And I had just flown from Italy in the morning, woken up early, flown from Italy to Hamburg, and then had a quick lunch and then prepared my suitcase so that I could be ready to get into the car and start driving at peak time to go to Frankfurt. And I remember as we were close to our destination, I started having this feeling inside of me, and I caught myself thinking, oh my God, I can't wait to get there so I can have a glass of fizzy water with rhubarb juice. Because I had just discovered that in Germany. There's no such thing in Italy. And I thought, oh my God, that's interesting. I'm looking forward to having a drink, to sitting down and finally putting my feet up. So a friend of mine who's a health coach used to say this thing that I really, really liked. And she said, when you do something, when you remove something from your life, make sure that you add something. Do not focus on what you are actually removing, but focus on adding stuff in there so that what you are adding, so that the positive practices that you are adding slowly phase out the negative practices. So the video cut off from the first part. If someone could just let the others know that I'm continuing in this, that would be great. So basically, yes, instead of focusing on not drinking, and I find that so important when it comes to alcohol, and that is something that I often repeat to my clients, stop thinking about not drinking. Because the more you think about not drinking, the more you will want to think, the more you will want to drink. So instead of thinking about alcohol and about how you're not drinking, start adding things to your life. Start adding practices. So start doing stuff that will keep you busy, that will keep your mind busy, and that will slowly cover the alcohol part, that will slowly mask the fact that you're actually not drinking, that will put that on the back burner so that at some point you won't even be thinking about the fact that you're not drinking anymore. It will just be a fact, and that's it. So let's see. What else can I say? Create your rituals, create positive rituals. And I am lost in the video, so let me see if I can get your comments, because I want to hear about the rituals that you have created. The rituals that you have created in your life when you quit drinking. My internet connection is being weird again. So Facebook is being weird again. So I'm still having doubts about being in the right group. So that's why I'm going to wait for a second before I go on. Okay. So Victoria, could you please let me know that I'm in the right group in this part of Club Soda webinar, please? Because I can't see it. Technology is great when it's working. So, okay, I'm in here and that's the right group. So let me go on. I'm sorry about that technical. Okay, cool. So rituals. Vicky says, I've only given up for a month. Not sure I have created any yet. That's a good place to start. So you could actually make a list. Take a piece of paper and a pen, and write about all the different rituals you could actually have in your toolbox. But I will be giving you a few ideas. So having a non-alcoholic drink and a post-work ritual is a good place to start, because very often the moment we most desire a drink is after we've had a hard day at work or a long day or a stressful day. So how about drinking tea instead of alcohol? How about having tonic water or non-alcoholic wine, alcohol-free wine instead of that drink? So how about not having a drink, but actually doing something different? How about going out and sitting outside and doing some breathing exercises, for example? And so one exercise, and I'm jumping ahead from what I had planned, but that's just because one exercise that is really, really, really helpful is a very simple and easy breathing exercise, which I do and which I recommend doing anytime you actually feel anything, whether it is stress, whether it is pain, sadness, whether you're nervous because you've got an important call or meeting coming, whether you're feeling tense and agitated because something's just happened, just breathe in. And I love this exercise because you actually don't need any special tools. You only need your nose and your lungs, which I guess you always carry around with you. So it works like this. If you can, close your eyes and breathe and count as you breathe. So you start with 1. So you breathe into 1. And as you exhale to +1. So for example, you breathe into 1 and you exhale to 2. And then you breathe into 2 and exhale to 3. Breathe into 3. Actually, let's do that together. I love that. So let's breathe together. Let's do one round of that. So close your eyes and take a deep breath to 1. I will count for you. So breathe into 1. Breathe into 2. 1, 2. So breathe into 2. Breathe out to 3. Breathe into 3. Breathe out to 4. Breathe in to 4. Breathe out to 5. Breathe into 5. Breathe out to 6. Breathe into 6. Breathe out to 7. Breathe into 7. Breathe out to 8. Breathe in to 8. And breathe out to 8. Take a couple of deep breaths. And you will see when you usually do this exercise, you will automatically feel calmer after you've done even just one round. And if you feel you're not feeling calmer, then feel free to do more rounds. Just enough for you to calm down. So that's one exercise that you can carry with you all the time. All the time. Everywhere, all the time. Then there are simple tricks as well. I know that Gabby Bernstein taught this trick. I think she learned that from Kundalini Yoga. I don't know. I learned that from her. And she said it's touching the tips and repeating a mantra. Her mantra was, peace starts within me. So maybe when you are actually angry, instead of kicking that person, just close your eyes and go like this. Peace comes within me. From within me. Peace comes from within me. And keep doing this. Repeat your mantra in your mind. And if you want, just keep doing this. Focus on doing this. I read in an article that just touching the tips of your fingers is a way to get you grounded, to prevent you from going in that spiral of feelings where you're like, Doing this just keeps you focused, keeps you grounded, and prevents you from just blowing up. So that's for everyday things. Then another thing that is really helpful, and that was really helpful for me. And in fact, I used it in my book when I was writing my book and I was processing my own story. I was doing my own healing, and I sometimes wrote about things that made me uncomfortable and triggered stuff and had uncomfortable feelings come up. I instinctively turned to what I called my soul superstar, who is basically my guardian angel, the voice of love. And what I did is that I wrote a letter as if it was her writing to me. And what I did is that I just closed my eyes, took a few breaths, and imagined if someone came to me with the problem that I have now, with the story that I have now, told that story to me, and I was looking at that person coming from a place of unconditional love, what would I tell them? What would I want them to know? I would take a few breaths, and then I would start writing this letter to myself, but putting myself in her shoes. So basically, imagine being someone else. Imagine being the voice of love. Imagine being the voice of unconditional love and writing a letter to yourself. And the evidence that this works is that when I submitted my draft to my editor to be corrected, edited, obviously she's an editor, she gave it back, she sent it back to me, and it was full of red pen marks except for those letters from my soul superstar. And I remember she said to me, those letters are just wonderful. They are perfect the way they are. The voice is perfect, the tone is perfect, the choice of words is just perfect. And that's because as I closed my eyes and I really tuned into what the voice of unconditional love would be, I got there. And that's because we all have that voice inside of us. We all are capable of loving unconditionally and loving ourselves unconditionally, even though that might seem impossible and that might be difficult because we are not trained to loving ourselves, because very often self-love and selfishness are confused, and when people love themselves, they are called arrogant, vain, or selfish. So we tend to put that aside, but we do have the capacity to love ourselves and to soothe ourselves and to be gentle to ourselves, even though in our everyday life we tend to very often be hard on ourselves, to beat ourselves up for the mistakes that we make, and to try and push ourselves further and further and further without taking into consideration, taking into account that we sometimes have limits. So that is a really good exercise that I would recommend when you are feeling in need of some TLC, tender love and care. When you feel sad, when you just feel alone, or when you feel like you could do with a hug, well, you don't need to go find that hug somewhere else, from someone else, or from a glass of alcohol. You can actually give that love to yourself. And very often, this method can also be used when, you've got situations in your life and you want some advice. What should I do? Close your eyes. Imagine it was your best friend or someone else saying that to you. Or just imagine being this fictitious creature, the grand voice of unconditional love. What would you say to yourself? And even though it's just a game, a lot of wisdom can come from that. And call me crazy, but that's what I do and that's what works. So These are a few of the things that you could do to be your own booze. There are so many different rituals and different practices that you can create to replace alcohol, to be your own booze, and to not need alcohol as a crutch. And of course, it's even better if you work on yourself, if you try and do some healing work as you are exploring your sobriety, because healing work helps lightening the burden. It helps healing those wounds that were actually like bottomless pits, sucking for energy and asking for alcohol to be poured inside of them all the time. So healing work is important, and when you are not doing healing work, it's also good to find your own rituals. And they don't have to be rituals that you've read somewhere, or that I have taught you, or that some mentor or someone else has taught you. You can create your own rituals. Just find what works for you. And for example, when you are feeling stressed or tired, or you've got those uncomfortable feelings, self-care usually works well. It works wonders. So what are your self-care practices that you could implement? It could be having a bath, or going for a massage, or going for a mani-pedi, or going for lunch, treating yourself to lunch without having your phone and your emails there all the time. Just switching off from the world and just sitting still with yourself, whether it's in front of some lunch or in a place that really lights you up, or anything else. It's all about you and what you want and what makes you feel good. So I'd say the first step could be to make a list of what makes you feel good. What makes you feel good in general? Write 10 things that you could do that make you feel good. And then make a table. Write the different types of emotions that you experience. Stress, anger, sadness, resentment, shame, guilt, happiness. What else? Excitement. Make a table and write those emotions on one side, and on the other side, think about funny rituals that you could create to deal with each of those emotions. Think about, well, they don't have to be funny rituals, but think about rituals that you could create to deal with them. Rituals that feel good for you. And it could be cooking. I remember I had this conversation with a client of mine. What food would correspond to each emotion? So if you were angry, how would you express that in a meal? What meal would represent anger? And I remember I was in Italy, so the students said, oh, pasta with the arrabbiata sauce, which means arrabbiata means angry. So that's hot sauce with spices and little bits of bacon. Or I remember when I said, what does sadness look like? And he said it would be like boiled zucchini. So, just explore these emotions and explore ways for you to deal with them that do not involve alcohol, that do not include alcohol, and keep that list somewhere so that whenever you need it, you have it ready to be used. So this is it for today, and I will have a look at the comments. So Victoria Harris says, love the breathing technique. Do you have an app you recommend? No, I don't have an app that I recommend, but I actually have a short recording with some background music and the breathing technique. So if you want to download it, I will put the link in the comments. So you can have it on your phone, and anytime you need it, all you have to do is put your earphones on and close your eyes and breathe. So Victoria also says, I like listening to an audiobook whilst I walk. Oh yeah, that's cool. I love audiobooks. And the good thing about audiobooks is that they also give you input. So not only are you doing something that helps you relax, but it's also doing something that will help you, because then you have more knowledge, you're acquiring more knowledge. So yeah, I guess this is it. I know that there is about 30 seconds of difference between now and the moment you see this, so I will stay here for another 30 seconds in case there's other comments. If not, I will still be there and here to answer your comments and to send you the link to my breathing exercise, and to send you any resource that I've found that could be of use or anything else. So that's it for me today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around. All right, bye bye.